Welcome to the program English Takeaway with Sani Sambo, a program where we learn English language together. In our previous lesson, we discussed nouns and their types. We also gave several examples as we could find them in sentences. Today, like I promised, we should look at some aspects of pronunciation. In the course of learning a second language, the learner has the tendency to face some challenges to do with grammar or pronunciation. Pronunciation is very important in language because when not done properly, it has the tendency to affect meaning. And when it affects meaning, then what is called communication breakdown can be a possibility in that kind of situation. So in this particular lesson, we shall look at some consonant sounds that normally constitute some challenges in the course of using language as a second language, especially in Nigeria and other countries where English is not a native language or it is not the language of the country. We shall look at consonant sounds and if we are to recognize them as alphabets, we shall be talking about P and F. These sounds normally constitute some challenges to some speakers, especially in northern parts of this country, Nigeria. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But let me tell you, you don't have to get worried about that. It is natural when you are learning a second language. The tendency of committing some errors are there, but there are ways to correct them. In fact, what I'm trying to say here is that you don't get worried because of your errors. Instead of getting worried, one can channel that kind of concern and energy in learning the best way to improve. It happens everywhere in the world. So instead of being worried, we should channel our concern or energy towards improving our performance. Because when we get worried, it have the tendency to create more challenges to ourselves in terms of language usage or practice. One of the challenges might be loss of confidence. And when you lose confidence in language usage or language use, it will affect your fluency. And when it affects your fluency, it will affect your communication skills generally. So now let's look at this f and p sound. You can see them there. I have given a lot of illustrations on this. They are this p and f or p and f are two different sounds that have no connection whatsoever apart from the fact that they are called consonant sounds. And you need to know that a consonant sound is a sound that we produce with some obstructions of the air in the course of the production. It could have a partial or complete blockage at some certain spots or certain areas in the course of producing the sound. It is common to find some people using P and F interchangeably. And whoever is familiar with the local languages around, particularly Hausa language, will tell you that P and F are used interchangeably in the Hausa language, such that wherever you replace P with F or vice versa, there is the understanding that the two can be used interchangeably. Let me give you a quick example here. When you say, for instance, Sarkin Power or Sarkin Power, or you say Pachi or Pachi or Pachi, to the Hausa man, this is correct. The only differences that might be observed there are dialectal in nature, such that some people from other parts of the country will decide to say power or flower, while others will say power. And it's correct in the Hausa language. And the tendency is that by the time you want to speak English language, you tend to transfer these characteristics or this tradition of using these three sounds interchangeably to English language, especially because P and F seem to share some, similarities in pronunciation. But to the native speakers, they are entirely different sounds that should be realized differently. Because without realizing them differently, the tendency is that you may change one for the other, and then it will affect the whole meaning of what you have. First, I will give you a tips. First and foremost, try to understand what organs of speech produce these sounds that you a lot of challenges in the course of pronunciation. We need to know this. Of course, we know that are produced by certain organs of our body that are in charge of the production of speech sounds or language generally. We may have like the tongue, we may have the lips, we may have the teeth, we may have the, or what we call the tip of the tongue, the front of the tongue, and the back of the tongue. We also have the alveolar ridge, just an area around immediately after our upper teeth. These speech organs combine in certain ways to produce different sounds that we have virtually in every language of the world. So first, which are the sounds that constitute these challenges, P and F, that people seem to look at the same? They are not the same. P and F are not the same. They are different consonant sounds that must be realized differently. By the time you are able to understand or to recognize the organs of speech that produce them, then you go further to find out how do they produce the sounds. This should be the first step that you should understand. Let's take, for instance, the P sound or the P sound. This sound is produced, just put your lip, upper lip and the lower lip and block the air. And just push the air a bit and you have P. So you have words like people, we have words like packet, we have words like pocket, we have, park, and so on and so forth. But for sound or for F sound as an alphabet, for F, we have words like food, we have words like fair, fail, find, friend, okay? We also have words like final, fluent. All these sounds are different. This or F sound is different from P, even from the way we pronounce them. So for example, the P, what are the organs of speech that produce them? At this point, you can engage into doing some practice. For instance, you could find that it is the upper and the lower lip that come together to produce the sound P. After maybe mounting some pressure within the mouth region, after the air has been completely blocked by the upper and the lower lip, when you release a bit and push the sound and push the air, after that initial total blockage, and you just open your lips at once, what you have is P or people. So there is no point pronouncing it as fearful, because that is another sound entirely different from that. For the pronunciation of sound or F sound, you combine two organs of speech. The first one is the upper teeth, as you could find. Some images might help us here, as you could find them there. And it is the upper teeth that will come down to have a contact with the lower lip, like you could see here. Upper teeth, lower lips. Upper teeth and lower lip produce the sound of food, final, friend, fair. This is for sound or F sound. For P sound, what you have is P sound. Upper lip and the lower lip block the air and mount some pressure within the mouth region, because the air has been completely blocked. And when you release it, when you just give away to the air and push it out a bit, what you have is P sound, because the organs that are involved are lips, upper and the lower lips that block the air will produce pa or p. So these are the ways we understand them. So we understand that for p sound or for p, it is upper and the lower lips that come together to produce the sound. But for f sound or for f sound, we have upper teeth and the lower lip combine or come together to block the air partially, and then you have a kind of hissing sound, like, because it is a partial blockage that will give way for some air to escape uh, through the teeth. The spaces around the teeth will produce that initial sound, and that is what is needed. It can be longer, fire or food, but for sound, you pronounce it as at once. So how do you reduce the number of errors that you commit with these kinds of sounds? It is natural to commit some errors in the course of learning a second language. I want to repeat this. It is natural for anybody learning a second language to commit some errors. You don't get worried, like I said. Instead of getting worried, try and channel that energy and that interest to learning the correct thing, and then you follow it with practice and practice and practice over and over again. We are all learning. We are just trying to get a way that we can use the language correctly, and then we should be able to communicate with people across the world that use the English language. As the lesson is only to just provide some tips to people who are interested in learning or using English language. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Sani Sambo.